Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm sorry that it's taken so long to actually make this episode, but I've been in a creative stump here lately, and I was going to make an episode with my friend, but when I got over there and everything and started recording, it was already 11 o'clock and I had to leave because I have to be up at 5:30 in the morning. Before I get started with the episode itself, I want to address that some people think that these principles are evil, or just being able to understand these concepts make you inherently evil, and they don't. I just want to clarify that everything that we study in esoterica, occult sciences, such as astrology and alchemy and whatever else, such as Kabbalah and whatnot, isn't inherently evil. It's not necessarily good either. It just depends on how you use it and your perception of it. So this is an example of the law of mentalism, which I'll get to in a minute, but I just want to address that this doesn't make you evil. Alright, so with all that out of the way, let's get started with the actual episode. So the first principle or law of the Hermetic set, or the 7 Hermetic principles, is that of mentalism. Mentalism is how you see the world around you in your perception of all things, including yourself. The Kabbalion by 3 Initiates says about mentalism that all is mind, the universe is mental. This is how it summarizes the principle of mentalism. This begs the question of free will versus destiny. Destiny is going to be the preset thing that everyone is meant to do in their time here on Earth in this physical incarnation, when free will is going to be when you choose what you do. Some people think that you can't have both, but this is actually false. You can have both. Destiny is going to be what you have to do, no matter what. Universe or consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it, is going to push you to do this. For example, like when Luke Skywalker gets told about the Force and all that in Star Wars, and Obi-Wan tells him that he has to go with him to Alderaan and learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi and help defeat the Empire. And he's like, no, I don't want to. I have work I have to do, blah, blah, blah. And he goes back to his home and he finds that his aunt and uncle have been killed by the Empire. That's basically the universal consciousness, or in this case, the Force, being like, you have to do this. There's no turning back now that you know about it. Really what you are trying to accomplish here is going to be balance between the two. You're going to be able to do things that you want the way you can do things the way that you want them to be done when unfolding your destiny and doing what you're supposed to be doing, but at the same time you're actually fulfilling what you're supposed to at the point where the universe wants everything to be. Think, for example, if you play video games like role-playing games. So say Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, you are a character who is actually the Sith Lord Darth Revan, and he has his memory wiped, and he has to go back and stop the Sith Empire and all that. Well, you can choose how you do it, you can choose who's going to help you. You can basically choose if one of the characters is going to be on your team or not, like not necessarily played as, but if you're actually going to kill her at one point or if you're going to let her live. And then if you kill her, you can decide if you're going to kill her friend, and then you can decide if you're going to let her live, and just all this other different deciding stuff. But at the very end, you are ultimately achieving the goal of either destroying the Sith Empire or reclaiming your role as the Dark Lord Darth Revan. Of course, isn't a perfect example, because like I said, you can either become the Dark Lord again, or you can save the Republic and become like the hero and all that. What I'm trying to get at is the idea of choices. You can choose how things are going to happen and all that up to a certain point. That point is going to be what you control in your free will decisions and etc. that people talk about when it comes to free will. People who don't believe in God try saying, oh well, if there is God, then there is no free will. And vice versa. If you do believe in God, a lot of people are like, oh well, there's no free will, and all that. I mean, some people don't say that, some people do. It just really depends on who you ask and why. But ultimately, universal consciousness is going to at least give you some degree of choosing how things are going to go and what's happening and all that. But you can't actively work against it. You have to work with it to some degree. The law of mentalism, or the principle of mentalism, isn't just about free will versus destiny, or I guess you could say almost like programming. It's also the way that you see things. It's basic. That's actually mainly what it is. So there's the saying of the cup's half full or the cup is half empty. If you're an optimist, whatever. I always say optimist like I'm saying Optimus Prime, but you know what I mean. Anyway, you can look at a cup of, say, water and say that cup's half full, and a passive person who's more down and more negative all the time is going to say, no, that cup's half empty. When really it's the same thing, it just depends on your viewpoint. The term I am comes in here, the I being intention or idea, and then am breaks down to A and M. The A is going to be action, so idea plus action equals M, and M is manifestation, or the complete picture of what's supposed to be happening. Emotion also comes in here. You can't just act on what you feel. You also have to think things through and judge it based on your own personal morals and those of the people around you. So that's going to be part of emotion. So I think, so I feel, so I act. This means thought then leads into emotion, which then leads into action. Since this is the principle of how you see things and your perception of reality, this is what makes it the first principle. You have to know how to see things, and you have to be able to have a certain viewpoint in order to understand things a certain way, or the way that they're supposed to be, or to be able to have the full complete picture of knowing how to look at things at multiple viewpoints, not just a single one that's narrow-minded. You have to be able to understand things in multiple aspects in order to get the total sum of what's going on. Before anything can really be, you have to have a thought or a concept of it. So say that when you're inventing something, or someone is inventing something, the idea for that object has to perceive it first. You can't just sit there and then all of a sudden just make say a pizza or a computer. I know one's sort of simple and the other one's very complex, but the idea or the principle of it is still the same. You have to have a need for that object to actually exist. You can, by accidents, make something and then later get the idea of it being a good thing to use. Say, for example, you pick up a hollowed out thing, like, let's just say, for example, a human picks up a skull back some thousands or millions of years ago or whatever, and it's holding water, and they drink the water, and then eventually they get the idea for a cup, and then the cup evolves into what we have today. You might accidentally do something and at the time not think anything of it, and then go back and turn it into an actual fully fledged idea or concept or a item. Really, the idea of consciousness exploring itself and its surroundings in a manifested form of you is the same thing. I'll get into that more into its own episode, but the idea is that consciousness wants to expand and explore, and it needs a physical form to do that. So then it creates you so that it can explore and create and express. This is how all things get created and invented. We see this a lot in the past, say, 200 years, since about 1800 with the Industrial Revolution. We have the idea for expanding our abilities and stuff, so we create new tools, and as it goes on, it gets more and more complex and more intricate than with previous generations, because more people realize the law of mentalism and being able to take that idea and pulling it down from the higher aspect of consciousness into the lower three-dimensional world that we all exist in. That right there is a example of the concept of as above, so below, but I will do more into that when I get into, say, astrology and the actual axiom of as above, so below itself. But that's going to be later on, I just don't know when. So back on a personal level, this is going to be the same thing as you wake up and you have two options. You can either think that the day is going to be a really good day, or you can think of it as being a really bad day. So say for example that you go to work and you're like, I don't want to go to work, it's going to be terrible, I have to deal with people, I want to sleep, I don't feel well, blah 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 blah. But on the other hand, you can think of it as, I get to actually go do something, I don't have to sit around the house, I can get money, and so on. If your will with this is strong enough, you can actually influence the other people around you to have a similar outlook. So they see that you're in a more positive, upbeat attitude, then they will get in a positive one as well. Or this can have the negative effect. You can be in a really good mood, and then you go in and everybody else is just in a really, really bad mood. Everybody's mad or irritated or whatever, and it starts bringing down your vibration to the same level as theirs, and you just go from being optimistic to just, this is absolute trash. And we've all been there, so this is a very relatable idea for this of the law of At that point, the best thing to do is not focus on what other people are thinking or doing, but focus on yourself. And really, that's ultimately the goal, is to be able to control what goes on in your own world, or at least your perception of it. Not necessarily controlling others, but controlling one's own self. So yeah, really, just to sum this all up, the principle of this is really just how you see things. So yeah, it's the most basic of the principles, but it's also one of the most important for that very reason. So anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I know it wasn't very long, but I can't really think of anything else to say without repeating myself, especially since I'm not having a discussion with other people. And sorry this episode took so long to get out and all that. Hopefully I can get back onto a regular schedule, so yeah. Alright, well, I don't have any news or anything, so take care for now, guys, and have a good week, and I will talk to you later. Bye.